Hello everybody, welcome to my channel.
Gene Tierney, 1920 to 1991, was one of Hollywood's most captivating actresses of the 1940s and 1950s, known for her exquisite beauty, refined screen presence, and the haunting depth she brought to her roles. Often described as one of the most beautiful women ever to appear on screen, Tierney balanced her glamorous image with performances that revealed complexity, vulnerability, and intelligence. She was born Gene Eliza Tierney on November 19, 1920, in Brooklyn, New York, and raised in an affluent Connecticut family. Originally planning to become a writer, Tierney's life took a turn when a visit to Warner Brothers Studios led to a screen test. She began her career on Broadway before signing with 20th Century Fox in 1940, quickly becoming one of the studio's most prized stars. Tierney's breakthrough came with the return of Frank James, 1940, and she soon appeared in a string of films that showcased both her beauty and talent. Her most iconic role was in Laura, 1944, a noir masterpiece where she played the enigmatic title character, a woman whose image inspires obsession. The role cemented her as a screen legend. Other major works included Leave Her to Heaven, 1945, for which she received an Academy Award nomination for Best Actress, Heaven Can Wait, 1943, The Ghost and Mrs. Muir, 1947, and The Razor's Edge, 1946. Tierney's personal life was marked by both glamour and tragedy. She married fashion designer Oleg Cassini in 1941, and they had 2 daughters. But the marriage was turbulent. While pregnant with her first child, Tierney contracted rubella during a USO appearance, resulting in her daughter being born with severe disabilities, a loss that deeply affected her. In later years, she battled severe mental health struggles, including depression and bipolar disorder, leading to periods of hospitalization. Despite these challenges, Tierney returned to acting sporadically in the 1960s and later wrote a candid autobiography, Self-Portrait, 1979, which detailed her life, career, and struggles with mental illness, helping destigmatize mental health issues at a time when few stars spoke openly about them. Gene Tierney died on November 6, 1991, in Houston, Texas, just shy of her 71st birthday. Today, she is remembered not only as one of classic Hollywood's most beautiful actresses but also as a woman of resilience who faced her private battles with honesty and courage. Early life and introduction to acting. Gene Eliza Tierney was born into privilege on November 19, 1920, to a wealthy insurance broker and a socially active mother. She attended elite schools in Connecticut and Switzerland and was fluent in French. Initially, Tierney intended to become a writer. Her teachers praised her essays, but a 1938 trip to California, during which she visited Warner Brothers and was encouraged to try acting, changed her trajectory. Back in New York, she honed her craft on the stage, making her Broadway debut in The Male Animal, 1940. Her refined beauty, marked by high cheekbones, almond-shaped green eyes, and a patrician demeanor, drew Hollywood's attention. 20th Century Fox signed her that same year. Rise to stardom. Tierney's early Fox films were a mix of historical adventures and light romances. She appeared in The Return of Frank James, 1940, her film debut opposite Henry Fonda, Tobacco Road, 1941, and Belle Starr, 1941, costumed melodramas that emphasized her elegance. Heaven Can Wait, 1943, an Ernst Lubitsch comedy showcasing her poise and charm. Her turning point came with Laura, 1944. In Otto Preminger's atmospheric noir, Tierney played a sophisticated, independent woman whose murder, or so it seems, drives detective Dana Andrews into obsession. The film became a cultural touchstone, and Tierney's face, immortalized in the portrait featured in the film, became a Hollywood icon. Peak performances in Leave Her to Heaven, 1945. Tierney shocked audiences with a chilling performance as Ellen Barrett, a beautiful yet possessive woman capable of murder. The role was a departure from her usual sympathetic characters and earned her an Academy Award nomination for Best Actress. Her portrayal remains one of classic cinema's most nuanced femme fatales, beautiful on the outside, destructive within. Other standout films included The Razor's Edge, 1946, a Somerset Maugham adaptation in which she played the charming yet morally complex Isabel. The Ghost and Mrs. Muir, 1947, a tender fantasy romance opposite Rex Harrison, now beloved as a timeless classic. Night in the City, 1950, a noir gem where her cool elegance contrasted with Richard Widmark's desperation. The Left Hand of God, 1955, opposite Humphrey Bogart in a unique wartime drama. Personal struggles and resilience behind the camera, Tierney's life was far less serene. While pregnant with her first child, Daria, she contracted rubella from a fan during a wartime event. Daria was born with severe hearing loss and developmental issues, leading to lifelong care needs. This tragedy deeply impacted Tierney's mental health. Her marriage to Oleg Cassini, a gifted and flamboyant fashion designer, was passionate but unstable, ending in divorce. She later had relationships with Howard Hughes, Prince Ali Khan, and JFK, though none led to lasting stability. By the late 1950s, Tierney's emotional struggles intensified. Diagnosed with bipolar disorder, she underwent treatments at a time when psychiatric care was often crude and invasive. She spent extended periods in mental health institutions, enduring electroconvulsive therapy but also emerging as one of the first Hollywood stars to speak openly about her illness. Later years and legacy. In the 1960s, Tierney returned to acting in supporting roles, such as Advise and Consent, 1962, and The Pleasure Seekers, 1964, but by the mid-60s she retired from films. She remarried, to Texas oilman W. Howard Lee, and lived quietly in Houston and on the Texas Gulf Coast. Her memoir Self-Portrait, 1979, was a breakthrough in celebrity candor, detailing her glamorous career and mental health battles with equal weight. Gene Tierney died on November 6, 1991, from emphysema, having battled years of smoking, a habit she began in her youth to deepen her voice for the stage. Cultural impact. Tierney remains a symbol of Hollywood elegance, embodying both the allure and the cost of stardom. Her image in Laura is one of cinema's most enduring icons, and her performance in Leave Her to Heaven is regularly cited as one of the greatest in film noir. Beyond her beauty, her honesty about her mental illness helped shift public conversation, marking her as a figure of both glamour and courage. Early years. A privileged beginning. Gene Eliza Tierney was born November 19, 1920, in Brooklyn, New York, to Howard Sherwood Tierney and Belle Lavinia Taylor. Her father, a successful insurance broker, and her mother, a former teacher, gave her and her siblings a cultured, upper-class upbringing. She attended St. Margaret's School in Connecticut, then a Swiss finishing school, and later Miss Porter's School in Farmington. Her education emphasized refinement, manners, languages, and literature, qualities that would later make her seem born for sophisticated roles. Her first love was writing. A skilled essayist, she dreamed of becoming a novelist. But when she visited the Warner Brothers lot in 1938, she was approached by a director who told her she belonged in pictures. She brushed it off initially, but the idea lingered. Stage work. Learning the craft, Tierney's father agreed to finance her acting studies, reportedly on the condition she earn her way within 2 years. She trained at the Fay Compton Studio of Dramatic Art and made her Broadway debut in The Male Animal, 1940, catching the eye of 20th Century Fox scouts. Studio head Darrell F. Zanuck signed her to a contract, an unusually fast jump from stage to screen for someone with so little formal experience. Hollywood entry, 1940 to 1943. Tierney's early films leaned heavily on her patrician looks. The Return of Frank James, 1940, directed by Fritz Lang, this western was her debut. Though her inexperience showed. Hudson's Bay, 1941, a historical adventure opposite Paul Muni. Tobacco Road, 1941, John Ford cast her in a satirical drama. Though her beauty clashed with the role's rural grit. Belle Starr, 1941, a Technicolor western that boosted her popularity. Critics noted her elegance but found her performances stiff at first, something she worked hard to overcome. Breakthrough, The Lubitsch Touch with Heaven Can Wait, 1943. Director Ernst Lubitsch unlocked her charm, guiding her into a witty, light-hearted style. She played Martha, a society beauty whose grace was matched by warmth. The film was a critical success and signaled she could be more than a screen ornament. Laura, 1944, the defining role Otto Preminger's Laura changed everything. Tierney played the title character, sophisticated, independent, mysterious. The entire plot hinges on how others perceive her, which matched Tierney's own image, a woman both adored and elusive. The portrait of her in the film became one of cinema's most iconic images. She later said she owed her lasting fame to this movie. Though filming was tense, Preminger's exacting style and Clifton Webb's sharp tongue made for a charged set. Leave Her to Heaven, 1945, dark allure if Laura showcased her elegance. Leave Her to Heaven revealed her capacity for unsettling complexity. As Ellen Barrett, Tierney played one of film noir's most chilling anti-heroines, beautiful, devoted, yet fatally possessive. The scene where she allows a young boy to drown remains shocking today. For this, she earned her sole Academy Award nomination. Post-war roles and range, 1946 to 1950, Tierney proved her adaptability. The Razor's Edge, 1946, as Isabel Bradley, she balanced charm with moral ambiguity opposite Tyrone Power. The Ghost and Mrs. Muir, 1947, a romantic fantasy that paired her with Rex Harrison's ghostly sea captain, filmed with poetic subtlety. Whirlpool, 1949, a psychological noir where she played a woman manipulated into crime by a hypnotist, Jose Ferrer. Night in the City, 1950, a gritty British noir with Richard Widmark. By this time, Tierney was one of Fox's top female stars, rivaling the likes of Betty Grable and Linda Darnell. Personal turmoil. Tierney's off-screen life became increasingly difficult. Marriage to Oleg Cassini, 1941 to 1952. Their relationship was passionate but stormy, marked by separations and reconciliations. Cassini designed many of her costumes, shaping her elegant image. Tragedy with daughter Daria. While pregnant in 1943, she contracted rubella during a USO appearance. Daria was born with blindness, partial deafness, and developmental disabilities, requiring lifelong institutional care. Romantic rumors, linked to Howard Hughes, who generously helped with Daria's care, Prince Ali Khan, and even John F. Kennedy. These personal stresses, along with the pressures of stardom, contributed to the onset of her bipolar disorder. Decline in mental health advocacy. By the mid-1950s, her illness had worsened. She withdrew from the screen, undergoing multiple hospital stays and electroconvulsive therapy. Unlike many stars, she later spoke openly about her experiences, unusual and brave for the time. Later career and retirement. Tierney returned briefly to acting in Advise and Consent, 1962, Otto Preminger again, in a political drama. Toys in the Attic, 1963, a Southern family melodrama. The Pleasure Seekers, 1964, a light romantic comedy. After marrying Texas oilman W. Howard Lee in 1960, she largely retired from public life, splitting her time between Houston and a Gulf Coast home. Final Years and Memoir. Her 1979 autobiography, Self-Portrait, was notable for its frank discussion of mental illness, well ahead of its time in reducing stigma. In her later years, she enjoyed privacy, friendships, and occasional public appearances. She died of emphysema on November 6, 1991, at age 70, just 13 days before her birthday. Legacy. Gene Tierney remains a rare blend of ethereal beauty, acting skill, and human vulnerability. Her face in Laura is frozen in cinematic memory, but it's her work in Leave Her to Heaven, The Ghost and Mrs. Muir, and Whirlpool that shows her depth. She also paved the way for stars to discuss mental illness openly, something nearly unthinkable in her era. Childhood and Personality Foundations, 1920 to 1938, born November 19, 1920 in Brooklyn. She grew up in Westport, Connecticut, in a large, elegant home with a governess, tennis court, and servants. She was the middle child of three, often described as the sensitive one. Her father was formal and disciplined, her mother warm but socially ambitious. Tierney was shy, almost painfully so, but already had a magnetic presence. Classmates said she had a calm, regal way of moving even as a teenager. She kept journals, wrote poetry, and read voraciously, something she maintained throughout her life. At Miss Porter's school and later in Switzerland, she cultivated a refined bearing and spoke fluent French, which gave her that continental sophistication Hollywood adored. She wasn't the type to dream of fame. In fact, she once said, "I never wanted to be a movie star. I wanted to be a writer of fine things." Broadway to Hollywood, 1938 to 1943. The turning point came during a family trip to California in 1938. Visiting the Warner Brothers lot, she was noticed by director Anatole Litvak, who famously told her, "Young lady, you should be in pictures." Back in New York, she studied acting and landed work as an understudy on Broadway. Her grace and poise caught the eye of influential critics, leading to her male animal debut. Darryl F. Zanuck of 20th Century Fox signed her in 1940, giving her small but visible roles to start. Tierney herself admitted that in her first films, The Return of Frank James, Hudson's Bay, Belle Starr, she was just trying to remember my lines and not trip over my costumes. The breakthrough years, 1943 to 1945, Heaven Can Wait, 1943, Ernst Lubitsch helped her find a lighter touch. His subtle humor suited her elegance. Laura, 1944, Otto Preminger's mystery noir masterpiece. The portrait of Laura, painted for the film, became one of the most famous props in cinema history. Tierney said, "I became Laura, and Laura became me." Leave Her to Heaven, 1945, a radical role for her, a technicolor noir with her as a radiant, obsessive killer. It earned her an Oscar nomination, though she later confessed she found it emotionally exhausting to play someone so disturbed. Professional peak, 1946 to 1950. During this time, she was among the most bankable women in Hollywood. The Razor's Edge, 1946, played Isabel, charming yet morally manipulative. The Ghost and Mrs. Muir, 1947, a poignant romantic fantasy. Tierney's chemistry with Rex Harrison made the ghostly love story believable. Whirlpool, 1949, a psychological noir that foreshadowed her own mental health struggles. Night in the City, 1950, British-made noir where her icy reserve contrasted with Richard Widmark's desperate hustler. Behind the glamour, the personal crises marriage to Oleg Cassini. Wed in 1941 despite her parents' objections. Cassini, a charismatic fashion designer, styled her personally, enhancing her elegance on screen. Daria's birth, 1943. Contracting rubella while pregnant resulted in her daughter being born blind, partially deaf, and developmentally disabled. Tierney said this was the greatest sorrow of her life. Rumored romances. She was linked to Howard Hughes, who financially supported Daria's care, Prince Ali Khan, and John F. Kennedy. Hughes remained a loyal friend for life. These personal stresses coincided with the relentless publicity machine of Hollywood, which demanded she maintain the image of Gene Tierney. The Perfect Lady. The Downward Spiral, 1951 to 1957. As the 1950s wore on, her bipolar disorder worsened. She began forgetting lines, feeling paranoid, and withdrawing socially. Underwent multiple hospitalizations and electroconvulsive therapy, ECT, at the time a brutal and risky treatment. In 1957, she made headlines when she took a job in a Texas department store under her married name, trying to escape Hollywood entirely. A gossip columnist discovered her, which led to public sympathy and studio offers for a comeback. Comeback attempts, 1960 to 1964, married W. Howard Lee, an oilman and former husband of Hedy Lamarr, in 1960. Appeared in Advise and Consent, 1962, her first film in nearly 7 years. Also in Toys in the Attic, 1963, and The Pleasure Seekers, 1964, though her heart wasn't fully in acting anymore. She permanently retired afterward. Life after Hollywood lived quietly in Houston and on the Gulf Coast, enjoying privacy and occasional social events. Wrote her memoir Self-Portrait, 1979, which shocked some readers with its frank discussion of psychiatric treatment, failed romances, and personal grief. Spent time painting, reading, and keeping up with friends from her Hollywood years, including Joseph L. Mankiewicz and Vincent Price. Developed emphysema after decades of smoking, a habit she had started deliberately in her youth to deepen her voice for the stage. Death and lasting reputation. Died November 6, 1991 in Houston, aged 70. Today, her image endures in 2 forms. The cinematic goddess, forever frozen as Laura, or the dangerous beauty of Leave Her to Heaven. The survivor, a woman who battled personal tragedies and mental illness at a time when few dared speak of it. Family, upbringing and early character. Gene Eliza Tierney's early life in Westport, Connecticut, was straight out of an Edith Wharton novel. Manicured lawns, French lessons, country clubs, and a family emphasis on refinement. Father, Howard Sherwood Tierney, exacting, self-made, with a taste for control. He later became her business manager, but this also caused financial friction when their relationship soured. Mother, Belle Lavinia Taylor, cultured and socially ambitious, instilled in Gene a love for art and literature. Gene's personality, polished, poised, but with a streak of sensitivity that made her less robust than her environment demanded. She once described herself as a girl who dreamed of novels, not cameras, hinting that Hollywood, for her, was a detour rather than a destiny. The Warner Brothers lot moment. Her serendipity event came in 1938 during a California vacation. A casual studio visit led Anatole Litvak to spot her and suggest she test for films. The comment stayed with her, and upon returning to New York, she took acting lessons. her father paying for 2 years of training with the ultimatum that she either succeed or come home. Broadway came calling, and critics noticed her unusual, natural elegance, even if her acting was still raw. 20th Century Fox years, the grooming phase, 1940 to 1943, 20th Century Fox built her image carefully. The return of Frank James, 1940, Fritz Lang gave her her start. She later admitted she didn't know where to look on camera. Tobacco Road and Belle Starr, 1941, studios used period costumes to frame her as a refined beauty even in rural or outlaw roles. Son of Fury, 1942, opposite Tyrone Power. She began to show a mix of glamour and romantic vulnerability. By 1943, she'd grown more confident, just in time for her first critical success. First elevation. Heaven Can Wait, 1943, working with Ernst Lubitsch was transformative. Lubitsch coaxed out a lighter, warmer side, turning her from statuesque to humanly charming. It was also the first time she was fully aware of her on-screen rhythm, how to time looks and pauses to give scenes life. The Laura Phenomenon, 1944, this was the film that sealed her cinematic immortality. Behind the scenes, Preminger fought to cast her. Zanuck thought she was too ladylike for a noir heroine. The portrait of Laura became a cultural object in itself. Tierney called it the most famous picture of me that never was me, since it was actually a photograph painted over by an artist. Her performance was cool, controlled, and slightly detached, exactly the aura the story required. Leave Her to Heaven, 1945, the dark icon, her Oscar-nominated turn as Ellen Barrett remains one of the most unsettling in Technicolor history. Notable scene, the lake sequence, in which Ellen watches a boy drown, is often cited as the most shocking act committed by a good-looking character in 1940s Hollywood. Critics praised her controlled coldness, a far cry from her warmer early roles. Tierney later confessed that playing Ellen left her drained and disturbed for weeks. Late 1940s, range and experimentation. Tierney moved between genres with surprising fluidity. The Razor's Edge, 1946, high society with hidden claws. The Ghost and Mrs. Muir, 1947, romantic fantasy that allowed her to be wistful and strong. Night in the City, 1950, British noir grit, far from her usual elegance. Whirlpool, 1949, psychological suspense where she played a manipulated woman, almost prophetic of her own later struggles. Personal turmoil behind the camera. Oleg Cassini marriage. Both glamorous and volatile, he designed her costumes in The Ghost and Mrs. Muir and Leave Her to Heaven, reinforcing her style icon status. Daria's birth, contracting rubella from an enthusiastic fan during a wartime meet and greet led to her daughter's disabilities, a personal tragedy that haunted her for life. Mental health decline. Balancing work, personal grief, and media pressure eventually tipped into depression and bipolar disorder. 1950s, the struggle years. Films like The Left Hand of God, 1955, showed she could still command the screen, but she began missing workdays and forgetting lines. She underwent repeated hospitalizations and electroconvulsive therapy, which she later criticized for erasing parts of her memory. By 1957, she'd retreated from Hollywood entirely, working quietly in a Texas department store until discovered by a gossip columnist. Comeback and final retirement, 1960 to 1964, marriage to oilman W. Howard Lee in 1960 brought stability. Appeared in Advise and Consent, 1962, and Toys in the Attic, 1963. Strong work, but her focus had shifted from career to personal peace. Final film. The Pleasure Seekers, 1964, a minor romantic comedy, after which she retired permanently. Life After Fame wrote Self-Portrait, 1979. One of the earliest Hollywood memoirs to openly address psychiatric treatment and mental illness without shame. Lived quietly in Houston and along the Gulf Coast, enjoying painting, reading, and close friendships. Battled emphysema in her final years, a result of decades of chain smoking. Death, an enduring myth, died November 6, 1991, Houston, Texas. Legacy. Gene Tierney remains one of cinema's most visually striking stars. The Laura portrait is as recognizable today as Marilyn Monroe's skirt scene, but she is also remembered as a rare example of a Golden Age actress who spoke openly about her human struggles. One. Origins and family influence. 1920 to 1938, Gene Eliza Tierney's beginnings shaped both her glamour and her fragility. Birthplace and heritage. Born November 19, 1920, Brooklyn, NY. To an affluent Irish-American father and English-American mother. Household dynamic. Her father, Howard Sherwood Tierney, was disciplined and controlling. Her mother, Belle, was charming but socially competitive. Education. Elite prep schools, Swiss finishing school, and Miss Porter's school. These gave her impeccable diction, posture, and manners that later made her look like nobility on film. Temperament. Poised and reserved in public but shy, sensitive, and deeply empathetic. She felt things intensely, a quality that made her captivating on screen but vulnerable in life. 2. Stage roots and studio entry, 1938 to 1940, Hollywood encounter, while visiting the Warner Brothers lot in 1938, Anatole Litvak spotted her and encouraged her to try acting. Training. Took acting lessons in New York, performed in summer stock. Her father financed this with a strict 2-year deadline for success. Broadway debut, The Male Animal, 1940, critics called her a poised newcomer with striking presence. Signed by 20th Century Fox. Zanuck saw star potential and decided she would be groomed as the studio's next aristocratic leading lady. 3. The grooming years, 1940 to 1943, Fox carefully tested her in various genres. The Return of Frank James, 1940, Fritz Lang's Western. Tierney admitted she was terrified and stiff. Tobacco Road, 1941, John Ford's rural satire. Critics felt she looked too refined for the setting. Son of Fury, 1942, began to show emotional engagement, opposite Tyrone Power. Heaven Can Wait, 1943, Ernst Lubitsch's touch brought her warmth and timing. This was her first critically acclaimed performance. 4. Stardom Arrives, 1944-1945, Laura, 1944, Otto Preminger's noir classic. The Laura portrait became as famous as the film. Tierney's cool mystery was perfectly calibrated. Leave Her to Heaven, 1945, as Ellen Barrett, she was chillingly beautiful and ruthlessly possessive, earned an Oscar nomination. The drowning scene remains one of cinema's most infamous moments. 5. Post-war mastery, 1946 to 1950. Tierney was now a top-billed star. The Razor's Edge, 1946, elegant yet morally complex. The Ghost and Mrs. Muir, 1947, romantic fantasy with enduring charm. Whirlpool, 1949, psychological noir foreshadowing her personal battles. Night in the City, 1950, raw British noir, a departure from her polished image. 6. The Private Cost of Public Success, Oleg Cassini marriage, 1941 to 1952, passionate but volatile.
Bye bye. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.